The military base stood in silence under the twin moons of a strange alien world. The air smelled of dust, metal, and fear. Every soldier in that place knew about the cage. They whispered about it when they thought no one was listening. They called her the Beast Queen, a giant alien woman with eyes like burning stars. Chained in the deepest hall of the base, they said she killed anyone who came too close. They said she was born for destruction. They said feeding her was the same as feeding death itself. No one dared enter her chamber except the guards who brought chains and whips. Even they moved with fear, their hands shaking as they watched her massive form sitting in the shadows. But one man did not believe the whispers. He was not a soldier, not a commander. He was only a worker, someone who cleaned, carried supplies, and stayed quiet. His name was Daniel. Day after day, he passed by the hall of the cage, and every time he saw her sitting there, still and silent. The chains around her wrists and ankles glowed with alien light. Stronger than steel, but her eyes, those golden eyes, followed him, not with rage, but with something else, something he could not name. The others mocked him when he slowed near the cage. "Careful, boy," they whispered. "One look and she'll rip you apart." But Daniel only lowered his head and walked on. Still, in his heart, he wondered if she was truly the monster they said she was. Why had she not broken free? Why had she not crushed them all already? That night, when the base was quiet, Daniel made a choice. He carried a piece of bread and a flask of water in his hands. His heart pounded like a drum as he walked into the Forbidden's hall. The torches flickered against the walls, shadows dancing across the giant figure in the cage. She was awake, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, her gaze locked on him the moment he stepped closer. The silence was so heavy, it felt like the air itself was. Holding its breath, Daniel swallowed hard and whispered, I brought you something." His voice trembled, but he forced his feet forward. He slid the bread and water through the bars, then quickly stepped back, his hands shaking. For a moment, nothing happened. The giantess did not move. She only stared, her head tilting slowly, as if confused. Then, with a sound like thunder rolling through the chamber, she reached out, her fingers long, strong. Inhuman closed gently around the bread. She lifted it to her lips and ate, not with rage, not with hunger, but almost with care. The soldiers had said she would rip apart anyone foolish enough to come close. But she had not touched him. She had taken his gift, and she was watching him still. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He did not know if it was fear or something else. He turned to leave, but before he could take a step, her voice filled the hall. It was deep, heavy, but smooth like rolling stone. "You fed me," she said. Her words echoed off the walls, shaking Daniel's bones. "You fed me," she repeated, louder this time. Her golden eyes seemed to burn brighter. Her chains rattled as she leaned forward. And then her lips curved into something that almost looked like a smile. "You are mine now," she whispered. Daniel froze in place. His breath stuck in his throat. The torches flickered violently, as if the whole base could feel the weight of her words. He stumbled backward, his heart racing. He wanted to run, to tell himself it was a dream, but the truth settled deep inside him like a stone. The Beast Queen had spoken, and she had chosen him. From that moment, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, Daniel tried to forget what had happened. He told himself it was madness, that her words had only been his imagination. But when he passed the cage again, her eyes were already waiting for him, golden and unblinking. They followed him through the hall. Her lips moved, though no sound came out, and Daniel felt his chest grow tight. He quickened his pace, but his mind refused to let go of her whisper from the night before. "You are mine now." Rumors spread quickly through the base. Guards noticed the way she watched him, and only him. They began to laugh, pointing at him whenever he walked past. "Careful, worker," they jeered. The beast has found a pet. Others warned him, lowering their voices. She'll use you, boy. She'll trick you into setting her free. And when you do, she'll kill you first. But even their words could not erase the memory of how gently she had taken the bread. No monster could do that, could they? That night, Daniel returned. He told himself it was foolish, but something stronger than fear pulled him forward. He carried more food this time, meat and water. When he slid it through the bars, she reached again, her fingers brushing the ground beside his hand. A shiver ran down his arm. She ate in silence, her golden eyes never leaving his. Then she spoke, her deep voice rumbling like the earth. "You are different," she said. Daniel swallowed hard, unsure if he should answer. "You do not strike me. You do not laugh. You do not fear me." Her chains rattled as she leaned closer, her face sharp and beautiful in an alien way. "Pressed near the bars. Why?" she asked. Daniel found his voice at last, though it trembled. "Because you don't look like a monster to me." For a long moment she was silent. Then she laughed a sound that shook the room, yet carried no hatred. It was a laugh full of something Daniel could not understand, sadness, maybe even relief. The days passed, and Daniel kept returning. At first, only at night, but soon even in daylight, when no one was watching. The Beast Queen began to speak more. Her name, she told him, was Kalira. She had once ruled a world far beyond the stars, but her people had feared her power, her strength. They betrayed her, binding her in chains forged from their greatest magic. Now she was a prisoner, forgotten by her own kind, and used as a weapon by the humans who found her. Daniel listened, torn between fear and pity. He began to see her not as a monster, but as a queen stripped of her crown. Her voice grew softer with him, her words warmer, and yet, always, there was danger in her eyes. One evening, when he brought her water, she pressed her massive hand against the bars. Her palm was wider than his chest, but she did not try to crush him. Instead, she whispered, "If they harm you, I will tear these chains apart." The promise sent a chill through Daniel's body. He should have felt safe, but all he felt was the weight of her words. The thought of her breaking free filled him with both terror and hope. The guards noticed the change. They saw how she no longer roared when Daniel entered, how her golden eyes softened when he spoke, and jealousy began to burn in their hearts. One night, as Daniel left the cage, a group of soldiers stopped him. They shoved him against the wall, sneering. "You think you've tamed the beast, don't you?" One spat. "She'll snap your bones the moment you slip, and we'll laugh while she does it." Another raised his fist, striking Daniel across the face. He fell to the ground, tasting blood. The soldiers laughed, kicking him again, but before they could land another blow, the hall shook. Chains rattled violently from within the cage. A roar exploded from Kalira's throat. Her golden eyes blazed like fire. The soldiers froze as her voice thundered through the hall. "Touch him again, and I will destroy you all." Her power surged so strongly that even the walls groaned. The soldiers staggered back, their faces pale. For the first time, Daniel saw fear in their eyes. Not fear of him, but of her. The commander arrived moments later, furious at the chaos. He ordered the soldiers away and glared at Daniel. "You will stay away from her," he growled, but Daniel said nothing, pressing a cloth to his bleeding lip. As he walked away, he felt Kalira's gaze burning into his back, not with rage, but with something even more dangerous possession. She had warned the soldiers for him. She had threatened the entire base because of him. And now, deep in his heart, Daniel knew the truth. He was no longer free. He belonged to her, whether he wanted it or not. The base was restless after that night. Whispers spread through the halls like fire. Everyone knew the beast had roared for the human worker. Some called it a curse. Others called it a bond. But all agreed on one thing: something dangerous was growing. Daniel tried to keep his distance. He told himself he would stop visiting her. Yet every evening, his steps carried him back to the cage. And every time, Kalira was waiting, her golden eyes glowing in the shadows, her voice soft when it was. "Only for him. You bleed," she said once, her deep voice rumbling as he pressed a cloth to his bruised face. "I bleed all the time," Daniel answered with a weak smile. But she did not laugh. Her chains rattled as she leaned forward, her gaze sharp. "No," she whispered, "they harm you because of me. And for that, I will kill them when I am free." Her promise was heavy, terrifying, but Daniel felt no mockery in it. She meant every word. Days passed, and Kalira began to tell him more. Her voice was like a storm contained in a cage. She spoke of her homeworld, a place of mountains taller than clouds and seas that glowed with firelight. She told him she was not just a warrior, but a queen, chosen by blood and by trial. Her strength was a gift, but it was also the reason she had been betrayed. "Power," she said, her golden eyes narrowing, "is the one thing even family cannot." "Forgive." Daniel listened, drawn deeper into her story. Piece by piece, the monster the soldiers feared was replaced in his mind by a fallen ruler. Not evil, not savage, just broken and chained, yet there was still something in her voice. Something sharp. When she spoke of her betrayal, her words dripped with fire. "I will burn their cities," she growled. "I will crush their armies, and I will make them kneel before me once more." Her chains clinked as she shifted, the sound echoing through the chamber. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to believe. She was more than vengeance, but every time she spoke of freedom. He heard the storm behind her calm. One evening, while cleaning supplies in a storage room, Daniel overheard two guards talking. "The chains are weakening," one whispered. "Their glow fades a little more each day." Daniel froze. The words. Striking like thunder, the guards laughed nervously. "When she breaks free, she'll slaughter us all." One said. "Not us first," the other replied, his eyes darting toward the cage. "She'll take the boy, her pet, before anything else." That night, Daniel's hands shook as he brought food. Kalira noticed at once, her golden eyes narrowing. "You are afraid," she said. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "They say your chains are breaking," he whispered. "And when they do, you'll kill everyone here." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Kalira leaned forward, her lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile. "Yes," she said softly, "I will." Daniel's stomach turned. He wanted to run, but his feet were heavy. "And me?" he forced out, his voice trembling. "What about me?" Kalira's golden gaze locked onto him. She tilted her head, studying him the way a predator studies prey, but then her hand rose, pressing against. "The bars. You fed me," she said, her deep voice almost gentle. "You are mine. When I break these chains, I will not harm you." Her words should have been a comfort, but they felt like a prison of their own. For Daniel knew what she truly meant. She would not kill him, but she would never let him go. The next day, the commander summoned Daniel. The man's cold eyes studied him like a problem to be solved. "You visit her too often," he said, his voice sharp. "She is dangerous. You are a fool if you think otherwise." Daniel stayed silent, his hands clenched at his sides. The commander leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She is using you. The beast is clever, but her hunger is endless. The moment she breaks free, she will crush you under her hand. And when she does, no one will save you." Daniel wanted to argue, but he could not, because deep in his heart, he was not sure if the commander was wrong. That night, Daniel returned to the cage again. Kalira was waiting, as always, her golden eyes fixed on him like fire. And for the first time, Daniel asked the question he had been afraid to speak. "Why me?" Kalira tilted her head, her chains rattling as she leaned closer. "You were the first," she whispered, the first to look at me and not see a beast. Her words shook him, for in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. The bond between them was not only chains and cages. It was something deeper, something dangerous. And whether it was born from kindness or from obsession, he could no longer tell. The torches flickered as she whispered again, her voice low and certain. When my chains fall, Daniel, the galaxy will remember my name. And you, she leaned so close he could feel the heat of her breath, you will stand beside me, whether you wish it or not. And in the silence that followed, Daniel knew his life was no longer his own. The tension inside the base grew heavier with each passing day. The soldiers no longer laughed when Daniel walked by. Now they stared, whispering behind his back, their eyes full of suspicion. Even when he carried tools or supplies, they muttered the same word under their breath. Traitor. Daniel tried to ignore them, but the weight of their stares followed him everywhere. He still returned to Kalira each night, and every time her chains glowed a little dimmer, every time her voice carried more power, she told him stories of her people, her betrayal, and her hunger for vengeance. But Daniel also saw another side of her. Quiet moments when she asked about his world, his life, his dreams. Sometimes she almost sounded human, and that only made the danger more real. One evening, Daniel brought her food as usual, but before he could place it near the bars, heavy boots echoed behind him. He turned, his stomach sinking. The commander stood there, flanked by two armed guards. His cold eyes burned into Daniel's. I warned you, the commander said, his voice low but sharp as a blade. You think you've tamed her? No, boy, she's tamed you. He gestured, and the guard seized Daniel's arms, pulling him back. Kalira roared, the sound shaking the entire chamber. Her chains rattled violently as she slammed her hands against the bars. Release him, she thundered. The guards faltered, their faces pale, but the commander stood firm. He dragged Daniel to the center of the hall, holding him before Kalira's cage. You see? He shouted at her, his voice echoing, this human is nothing. A weakling who thinks he matters to you. Kalira's golden eyes blazed brighter. Her voice was like fire rolling across stone. He is mine, she growled, and if you harm him, I will tear this world apart. The commander smirked, his grip tightening on Daniel's shoulder. Then prove it, he said, his voice dripping with cruelty. He shoved Daniel forward, right against the bars. The guards stepped back quickly, their hands on their weapons. The air grew thick, heavy. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest as Kalira leaned close. Her face filled his vision, her breath hot and sharp. Her chains creaked as if they could snap at any moment. The soldiers watched in silence, waiting. One wrong move, and they would unleash their weapons. The commander folded his arms, his eyes cold and cruel. Kill him, he ordered sharply. Kill him, and prove you are nothing but a beast. For a long moment, the hull was frozen. Daniel stood trembling, inches away from her. Kalira's golden eyes locked on his, her hands slowly rising. Her massive fingers reached through the bars, curling around his shoulders. Daniel closed his eyes, ready for the end, but instead of crushing him, she pulled him close, shielding him against the iron bars. Her voice thundered, shaking the walls. No one touches him. The soldiers gasped, their hands tightening on their rifles. The commander's eyes narrowed in fury. Kalira's chains rattled so violently that sparks flew. The glowing marks along the metal cracked and flickered. The commander realized too. Late his cruel test had backfired. Instead of proving her a monster, it had shown her loyalty to the human. And now, the beast's fury was no longer contained. The commander barked orders, his voice sharp. Prepare the execution beams. We end this tonight. The guards scrambled, dragging heavy weapons into place. Daniel's heart stopped. No. He shouted, struggling against the commander's grip. You can't. She's not. but his words were drowned out by Kalira's roar. The floor shook, dust falling from the ceiling as her chains strained against her strength. The commander's face twisted with hatred. He shoved Daniel violently. Throwing him inside the cage, Daniel stumbled, crashing to the ground beside Kalira's towering form. The soldiers raised their weapons. Aiming directly at them both, Kalira bent low, her massive body curling protectively around him. The glow of her chains sputtered and sparked as if they could break at any moment. The hall was chaos, soldiers shouting, weapons charging. The ground trembling under Kalira's rage, Daniel pressed against her arm. Feeling the heat of her skin, for the first time, he realized how truly massive she was. And yet, instead of fear, he felt something else. A strange, dangerous safety. Kalira's golden eyes met his, fierce and burning. "You see now," she growled softly, her voice only for him. "They cannot cage me forever. And when these chains fall, I will destroy them all." Her gaze softened for a moment. "But you? You will never leave my side." Outside the cage, the commander raised his arm. Ready to give the order to fire, the weapons hummed, glowing brighter, soldiers aimed, sweat running down their faces. And Kalira's chains cracked with a sound like thunder. The air itself seemed to tremble, as if the world knew something terrible and unstoppable was about to happen. And Daniel understood the truth. This was no longer about survival. This was about a bond that could bring down the entire base, and perhaps the entire galaxy. The hall was fire and thunder. Soldiers shouted as their weapons glowed, humming with deadly power. The commander's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Fire on my command." Inside the cage, Daniel pressed against Kalira's massive arm. Her body shielded him completely, her muscles tense, her golden eyes blazing. Every chain that bound her rattled and sparked, the glowing marks etched into the metal breaking apart. One by one, "Don't do this," Daniel shouted at the soldiers, his voice raw. "She's not what you think." But his words were drowned in the roar of charging weapons. The soldiers were too afraid to listen, too desperate to believe she was nothing but a beast. Kalira's deep voice rumbled above him, steady and unshaken. "Daniel, do not fear," she whispered, her massive hand curling protectively around him. "They cannot harm you while I live." The commander raised his hand high, his face twisted with rage. "Now, fire," he roared, the chamber filled with light. Beams of searing energy shot forward, slamming into the cage. The air burned, metal screamed, and Daniel covered his ears as the sound rattled his bones. Kalira grunted as the blast struck her back, her skin smoking, her chains glowing red-hot. But she did not move. She crouched lower, her body wrapping around Daniel like a living wall. Every blast struck her, but she refused to let him take a single hit. Her golden eyes flickered with fury. Her roar tore through the chamber like thunder, shaking the ground itself. The chains snapped one by one, shattering like glass under the force of her power. The soldiers froze, their weapons faltering. The commander's eyes widened as the glow of the last chain sputtered and cracked. Then silence. For a breath, no. One moved, the final chain broke with a sound like a mountain splitting. And Kalira stood tall for the first time in years. Her full height towered above them all, her shadow swallowing the hall. The soldiers stumbled back, their faces pale with terror. Kalira lifted her head and roared. It was not just a cry of rage, it was freedom itself. The walls shook, dust rained from the ceiling, weapons clattered from trembling hands. Her golden eyes swept across the room, but her arms stayed wrapped around Daniel. She raised him high, holding him close against her chest, and her voice thundered. "He is mine. Touch him, and you will die." Panic spread through the soldiers. Some dropped their weapons and fled, their boots echoing through the corridors. Others fired blindly, their beams bouncing uselessly off her hardened skin. Kalira moved like a storm, smashing her massive hand through the floor, crushing weapons with a single strike. She swung her arm, knocking soldiers aside as if they were nothing but dolls. The commander stood his ground, though fear flickered in his eyes. "You think you can escape, monster?" he shouted, raising his weapon. Kalira's head turned sharply, her golden eyes narrowing. Her hand shot out, faster than Daniel thought possible. She grabbed the commander by the chest, lifting him into the air as if he weighed nothing. Her claws pressed against his armor, bending it with terrifying ease. "You caged me," she growled, her voice shaking the walls. "You whipped me, starved me, laughed at me." Her teeth bared in a snarl. "For that, I should end you." The commander gasped, his face red as her grip tightened. But before she could crush him, Daniel shouted, "Stop!" His voice rang out, desperate, cutting through the roar of her fury. Kalira froze, her golden eyes flicking down to him. Daniel's chest heaved as he looked up at her. "If you kill him now, you'll prove them right," he said, his voice shaking. "They all believe you're only a monster. But I know you're more than that." The silence was heavy. The soldiers held their breath. The commander struggled in her grip. Kalira stared at Daniel for a long moment, her eyes burning. Then slowly, she lowered the commander, tossing him to the floor like broken glass. He coughed, scrambling back in shock. Kalira's voice rumbled, low and dangerous. "You live." "Only because he asks it." The soldiers stared in disbelief. They had seen her strength, her fury, yet she had spared their leader, not for mercy, but for the human standing in her arms. Kalira stepped forward, her massive body shaking the ground. She smashed through the reinforced bars of the cage as if they were nothing. The once unstoppable prison lay in ruins behind her. With Daniel clutched firmly against her chest, she strode toward the shattered doors of the hall. Every soldier who tried to stop her was thrown aside like leaves in a storm. The base's alarms blared, lights flashing red, but nothing could halt her march. Daniel clung to her, his heart pounding. He had seen her chains break, seen her fury unleashed, yet even as terror filled him, another truth burned brighter. She had protected him. She had chosen him. And now, nothing in the galaxy could take him from her. As the base walls trembled and soldiers scattered in chaos, one truth echoed in Daniel's mind. He was no longer a simple worker, no longer just a man who made a mistake by feeding a caged queen. He was bound to her now, and with her freedom came a storm that would shake the stars. The alarms howled like sirens of doom. Red lights flashed across the long steel corridors. Throwing everything into chaos, soldiers ran in every direction, their boots pounding against the floor, weapons clutched tight, shouting orders that were drowned in the noise. But in the middle of it all, Kalira moved with calm fury. Her massive frame bent low so Daniel could cling safely against her chest. Her golden eyes cut through the haze, always scanning for threats, always ready to strike. "Hold on." She growled softly to him, her voice deep as thunder yet strangely gentle. "They will chase us, but none will take you from me." Daniel clung tighter, his heart hammering. Every breath burned in his lungs as he looked past her shoulder. Dozens of soldiers were already behind them, weapons raised, firing bolts of searing energy that sizzled against the walls. Each shot lit the air, leaving black scars on the steel. But Kalira's body twisted, dodging with unnatural speed for her size. The blasts that touched her skin only made her snarl, smoke curling from the burns. Yet she never slowed. The corridor shook as she ran, her massive steps breaking the floor. Panels, soldiers scrambled, some too terrified to face her, others too loyal to stop chasing. Daniel saw the fear in their eyes, the same fear that had caged her for years. But now it was mixed with something else, a truth they could no longer deny. She was free, and she was unstoppable. They turned a corner, bursting into a vast hangar. Rows of ships lined the walls, their engines glowing faintly as technicians fled. abandoning their stations in panic. "Freedom waits," Kalira whispered, her golden eyes fixed on the largest ship near the center. But before they could reach it, the air filled with the crackle of energy. Gates slammed shut, sealing the exits with walls of glowing force. A voice echoed from the upper deck, cold and sharp. "You will not leave here alive." It was the commander, his face pale, but his voice full of false strength. Around him, elite soldiers in heavy armor lined the balconies, their weapons aimed down. Every barrel glowed with lethal light. Daniel's stomach dropped. They were trapped. Kalira lowered him gently onto the floor, her massive hand brushing his hair as her golden eyes softened for a moment. "Stay behind." "Me," she said, her voice calm but burning with fire. "No matter what happens, do not move." Daniel's throat went dry. "Kalira, you can't fight them all," he whispered. But she only smiled a dangerous, terrifying smile. "I am not fighting for myself," she rumbled. "I am fighting for you." The commander's hand cut through the air. "Fire!" He roared. The hangar erupted. Dozens of beams rained down, turning the space into a storm of light. Kalira roared, throwing herself forward. Her massive arms swept like blades, knocking crates and machines into the air, shielding Daniel from the deadly fire. The blast slammed into her back, her shoulders, her legs, but she pushed on. Every step shook the hangar, her body smoking, her fury unstoppable. She leapt, her massive form crashing into the balcony, the floor splitting under the impact. Soldiers screamed as she tore through them, her claws ripping weapons apart like toys. The commander fired shot after shot, his weapon glowing red with heat, but Kalira kept coming. Her golden eyes locked on him. Down below, Daniel scrambled behind a steel crate, heart racing. He wanted to help, but what could he do against soldiers with weapons that could melt steel? He felt useless until he noticed a console glowing near the hangar wall. It controlled the force gates. If he could reach it, he could open the exits. But the path was exposed, filled with falling sparks and stray blasts. Daniel swallowed hard. "Do something, or you'll both die," he whispered to himself. Then he ran above. Kalira slammed her hand into the balcony, sending soldiers flying. Her roar filled the hangar as she cornered the commander. But at that very moment, Daniel reached the console, his fingers trembling as he slammed buttons. The screen screamed warnings, the system locking him out. Come on," he muttered. Slamming his fist on the panel, the alarms changed pitch, the gates flickered, and then, with a shudder, the glowing walls collapsed. The exits were open. "Kalira!" Daniel shouted, his voice breaking through the storm. She turned, saw him waving, and in one swift motion, she hurled the commander aside like trash and leapt down to him. Her massive hand scooped him up, pressing him protectively against her chest. Without another word, she charged toward the nearest ship. The commander's broken voice echoed behind them. "Stop them. Stop them now." But it was too late. Kalira smashed through the ship's ramp, tearing the doors open. The inside glowed with lights, controls flickering to life. She carried Daniel into the cockpit, placing him gently in the seat. "You fly," she commanded. "I will guard." Daniel's hands shook as he stared at the controls. He wasn't a pilot. He had never flown anything beyond simple loaders. But when he looked up and saw her standing tall, her golden eyes burning with trust, something inside him hardened. "I'll get us out," he whispered. The engines roared, shaking the hangar. Soldiers fired wildly, but Kalira blocked every shot, her body a wall of flesh and fury. The ship lifted, rising like a beast from its cage. With one final push, Daniel pulled the lever, and the ship burst through the open gates. The stars exploded. Into view, endless and free, Kalira leaned close, her voice low and steady. "We are hunted now," she said. "They will never stop chasing. But they will never take you from me." Daniel's heart pounded as the stars stretched before them. The hunt had begun, and he knew this was only the beginning. The stars stretched endlessly outside the cockpit window. Daniel had never seen them like this, not through glass walls or reinforced domes, but through the view of a stolen ship racing across open space. The silence should have been peaceful, but it was not. Behind them, alarms screamed across every human channel. The base had already launched pursuit ships, and Kalira's golden eyes followed their blinking lights in the distance. "They come," she rumbled, her voice low and steady. Her giant frame filled the cockpit, her claws resting lightly on the metal beside Daniel. "They will not forgive your choice to free me." She leaned closer, her breath hot against his skin. "And they will never forgive mine." Daniel's hands shook on the controls. I don't even know where to go," he admitted. The ship was powerful, but he had no training, no plan. "They'll catch us, Kalira, unless we do what I was meant to do." She interrupted. Her golden eyes burned brighter, like fire in the dark. "My chains are gone, but my enemies are not. Your people are now my hunters. My people are my traitors, and the galaxy is a cage wider than any prison." She turned to him, her massive face close to his. "But you are the key that broke my silence." Daniel swallowed, his heart pounding as her words sank in. "What do you mean?" "You fed me when all others feared. You gave me water when I was left to thirst. You looked at me not as a beast, not as a weapon, but as Kalira." Her claws grazed the console, sparks jumping. "And so I claim you. Daniel, from this moment, you are mine, not my servant, not my prey, but my bonded." The word hung heavy in the air. Daniel's breath caught. "Bonded? What does that mean?" Her eyes softened, though the fire within them never dimmed. "In my people's law, it is the vow stronger than blood. It means my strength is yours, my life is yours. It means no power in the stars can break us apart. It means you cannot leave me." Daniel felt both a chill and a warmth spread through him. He wanted to deny it, to push away the impossible weight of her vow. But when he looked into her eyes, he realized the truth. She wasn't asking. She had already decided. Before he could answer, the ship shook violently. Blinding light filled the cockpit as pursuit craft locked onto them. Energy blasts rattled the hull, alarms flaring red. "We're hit," Daniel shouted, gripping the controls, but Kalira didn't flinch. Her massive hand slammed against the side wall, claws digging into metal. "Fly toward the storm," she commanded, pointing toward a swirling cluster of clouds in space. Daniel's eyes widened. "That's an ion storm. If we go in, we'll be fried alive." Her golden gaze never wavered. "If we stay, we die anyway. Trust me." For a heartbeat, Daniel hesitated. Then he slammed the controls forward. The ship lurched, engines screaming as they dove into the raging storm. Bolts of blue lightning tore across the void, slamming into the hull. The lights flickered, panels exploded, sparks showering the cockpit. Daniel fought to hold the ship steady, every nerve in his body screaming. Kalira braced herself, her body shielding him from falling debris. Behind them, the pursuing ships followed until the storm claimed them. One by one, the lights on the radar blinked out, explosions flashing like dying stars in the storm's heart. Daniel's eyes widened. They're gone. But Kalira's gaze was still fixed ahead. Not gone, consumed. This storm is no death, it is rebirth. As if on cue, the ship's systems flickered with strange symbols, alien runes glowing across the panels. Daniel gasped. What's happening?" Kalira's smile was fierce, almost triumphant. "This ship is not human. It was taken from the wreck of my people's fleet. You did not just free me, Daniel. You woke the last of my empire." The runes pulsed like a heartbeat, and suddenly, the ship responded as though alive. The controls no longer fought him. They flowed, guided by an unseen hand. A storm parted before them like curtains of fire, creating a path that only their vessel could follow. When they burst out the other side, the stars were clear, and no hunters remained. Daniel slumped back in his seat, gasping. We survived." Kalira leaned close, her golden eyes glowing like suns. "No, Daniel," she whispered, her voice vibrating with ancient power. "We began." Daniel looked at her, truly looked at her, not as the caged monster, not as the terrifying queen, but as the force that had chosen him, claimed him. And though his mind screamed at him to resist, his heart whispered something else. Perhaps he didn't want to resist at all. Kalira lifted one massive hand, her claw brushing gently against his cheek. "You are mine now," she repeated softly. "And I am yours." Outside, the stars stretched endless, the galaxy waiting. But within that cockpit, Daniel knew his fate was sealed, not by chains, not by fear, but by the vow of the giantess who would never let him go. And somewhere, in the dark between stars, both humans and aliens whispered the same question. What happens when the most feared queen in the galaxy binds herself to a human?